Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today, seeing as we are now midway through April and we're very much in the final stretch of Year 4, Season 11's finale is just 2 weeks out, Year 5 is fast approaching, and as we have yet to get any specifics on what may be in store for it other than the Descent game mode, I wanted to take this final opportunity to give you all some of the top picks on my content wishlist, things that I would personally love to see added to the Division 2 in Year 5. Would we ever see these things? Is there any likelihood of it actually happening? No clue, this is purely my own thoughts and ideas, throwing them out there simply for fun, and as always, but particularly on this subject, I would love to hear your guys' own ideas and thoughts down below. If you end up enjoying the video, a like would be very appreciated, and be sure to click that subscribe button as well as turning on the notification bell so that when we do hear more about Year 5, you're the first to know. Without further ado, let's get into this. Now, this first pick isn't a revolutionary one, but I want to explain some of my thinking behind it, and we are of course talking about a rework to Kenley College. This is how I look at it. There was a time when the Division 2 sorely needed more replayability, right? Compared to all of the Division 1's post-launch game modes and whatnot, Division 2 had far less in that regard. But with the arrival of Year 5 Season 1, the Division 2 will then have 3 distinct game modes, right? Summit, Countdown, and obviously Descent. Now, could changes be made to some of those to make them more worthwhile or unique, mostly looking at you, Summit? Sure, but the point is, knock on wood, for Descent, they all work, and they all offer a different experience. Kenley is definitely the black sheep of the bunch. Is it technically a game mode? I guess, but it lacks almost everything that a traditional Division game mode has. Uniqueness, replayability, and a worthwhile reason to go and do it. It was a mode that not many people liked back in Year 1, and here we are 4 years later, and I could not tell you in good faith that I've ever met somebody who's told me they're a fan of Kenley College. And so, instead of the devs coming out with their Year 5 plans and saying, we're working on another new game mode for, like Year 5 Season 3, I would much rather that we finally get a rework for Kenley College, because at this point, it's just wasted space. And it's a cool environment, one that I think many of us would enjoy spending more time in if there was actually any reason to go there. So, as for what a rework could entail, there's obviously many directions they could go with that. Some, myself included in the past, have suggested that they could turn it into a secondary countdown map. I wonder if that might require them to make some environmental changes to accommodate for that type of a flow, but that would be cool to see. They could, of course, just take the physical space there and completely transform it from the expedition experience we have now. Maybe they keep the idea of the tri-week rotation and make it so that in the weeks that Kenley does pop up, there's a pool of different modifiers or encounter settings or whatever that may be, so that they're not quite infinite combinations, because that would be very hard to pull off, but make it so that you're unlikely to have a similar experience there for months in a row. The possibilities are really endless. To be honest, I care much less about what they do with it. I just think that we're at the point with the game where I would much rather they rework this corner of the game that's practically untouched, rather than put resources into developing yet another new game mode after Descent. It's awesome to have as many different content experiences in the game as possible, and we're certainly much better off now than we were before Summit existed, but at this point at which we'll have 4 game modes in the game, including Descent and Kenley, you run the risk of approaching a territory where they start to become less unique and lose their individualism, and I think that'd be a shame. So a Kenley rework is at the top of my list for Year 5 content. I think it'd be really cool to see. Moving on, I've seen a good number of you talking about this lately, and I actually made a dedicated video about it a while ago because I feel the exact same way, and that is that we need more New York City content. The Warlords of New York Lower Manhattan map is criminally underused. It is so well done, the different areas are so diverse and just fun to traverse. There's tunnels, verticality, wreckage, interiors, you name it, and I think it's just such a shame that we haven't had more reasons to go back to New York ever since Woney's campaign. Similar to what I was just saying with Kenley, there's many different directions the devs could go in to revitalize this zone, primarily I think in one of 2 camps. Either they need to give New York something exclusive, make it worthwhile visiting compared to DC, or they just need to give it its own experience, its own mode, which is entirely contrary to what I was just saying with Kenley, I admit, but as I said, this list is in no order with no expectations, it's just all for fun. Some ideas people have suggested before and things I've even said is that utilizing the open world there somehow is the key. It's so masterful, and I don't think anyone would care if you're asking them to spend more time there. That could come in the form of a legendary open world setting, one that's exclusive to New York, so that you give it that unique draw. They could maybe also do some sort of open world game mode. Maybe you and a team spawn into a random location and need to cross the map without dying, so sort of a blend of like survival and legendary, if you will. Maybe you all have to select your loadout beforehand and can't swap things mid-match, so there's much higher stakes. Maybe you could even bet before the run, like up the risk and increase the reward. There are many things they could do with New York City. I think the one thing that the majority of players agree upon is that something should take place there. Because while I understand that the narrative of the game right now is all focused around DC, put a seasonal target there. Do something, because it's a shame for how few reasons I can find to go and visit NYC in Division 2. And lastly, we come to the third and final item on the list, easily the least likely one of all of these to actually happen, and that is for us to get one or a few new conflict maps. Now, this is something that the devs have commented on before, and they said that until they get PvP to a better state than it's in, making something like new conflict maps wouldn't be a priority. And that's certainly fair. Now that we've gotten a few PvP adjustments in Season 11, we know we're getting the Conflict XP revamp in Year 5 Season 1. I'm sure the PvP ETF have been giving a lot of ideas. Perhaps we get to a spot where making more conflict maps is a viable option. And I did want to address this very quickly. I've seen with the recent X-Defiant beta that many are saying Massive are lazy for not adding more PvP maps, because I guess all of these people are game developers who now know how to translate those assets into Division 2. The fact of the matter is this: while I think PvP has a much higher player count these days than people give it credit for, adding new PvP content at this point is not the kind of thing that's going to generate tons and tons of buzz for the game, as much as I would love to see it. And in addition, you can't get reused assets, turn them around, and reshape things and call it a PvP map. I don't know where we got that idea, but PvP map design takes actual thinking and methodology to design, taking lines of sight into consideration, elevation points, flank routes, distances from spawns, etc. It's not something that can just be slapped together unless you just want a horribly imbalanced experience. And that's not to say that the existing maps we have in Div 2 are perfect, but they were made by a team who actually knows PvP. Redstorm, a team that is unfortunately no longer on the game. So I don't know if Massive have acquired any talent with PvP experience in the last year, but if they were to find the time, the resources, and the proper expertise to make at least one new well-designed conflict map, that would be very cool to see. As a PvP lover, obviously this is just my own wish list, but yeah, I would much rather we never get any new conflict maps if the alternative were slapping in reused X-Defiant maps and thinking that would go over well in any sort of way. I really don't know where that line of thinking originated. They're two completely different genres of games, one that focuses on first-person PvP, one that shares third-person PvP alongside its PvE base. So anyway, I thought I would just point that out, but in an ideal world, seeing some new well-constructed conflict maps would be an awesome addition for the PvP side of the game, and one that I would love to see in Year 5. And that, my friends, does it for my top 3 items on my Year 5 content wish list. I hope you enjoyed. It's always fun to do these types of things entirely for the heck of it. As I said at the start, I don't prescribe any likelihood to any of these actually happening, but that doesn't mean it isn't fun to theorize about. Absolutely do let me know what content items would be on your Year 5 wish list, whether it's reworks to old content, new game modes, anything else. I will, as always, be super curious to read through them. Hopefully, it will not be long until we officially hear what's in the works for Year 5. I have a feeling it might be getting pretty close, and I am amped to hear what's in store. That's going to do it for me today, though, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Ow.